Ed Coughlan. Very much. I should really have called you Dr. Ed Coughlan there, shouldn't I, Ed?
No need.
Okay. Ed, a lot of people coming along tonight are aware of who you are, some with varying levels, but many will have looked at the term skill acquisition and wondered, that sounds interesting, but what is it? So what is this skill acquisition about?
Skill acquisition, for me, and my understanding of it, is about that space where people want to learn. The particular domain that I'm interested in, it's in sport, but it feeds into a lot of other aspects of my life around maybe education and research, but especially in the sport space about how people learn and how they learn effectively so that it will be there for them when they need it most, let's say in a competitive setting. So skill acquisition as a whole embodies motor skills, like the actual actions that we go through, be it kicking or catching or throwing or so on and so forth, or movement skills, be it stopping, turning, actual actions that we make with our body, but also it's embedded in sports psychology. So a lot of the processes that are required for people to undertake when they are trying to improve themselves are very closely and strongly linked to sports psychological principles. And essentially, at an elite level of sport anyway, that's important to make sure that you are able to perform when you want to perform, and you're able to perform when maybe others around you are not performing, let's say, especially in a team sport perspective.
So, like a skill acquisition expert like yourself, if whatever team or organization are bringing you in to help them, what is it that they're hoping you're going to bring to the mix?
If it's in a team sports setting, I'm very often brought in to work with people who work in discrete skills. So let's say, for example, a free taker in hurling or football, an outside shooter or free shot taker in basketball, a kicker or a line-out thrower in rugby, or a passer, somebody whose specific areas is defined by specific skills, let's say. So in the team setting, it'll be like that. In individual sports, it's around, let's say, movement enhancement, to identify, are there movements or are there things that they're doing with their skills that are negatively impacting on how they perform. So let's say at the moment now, in some work I'm doing in golf, it's trying to identify not so much the technical aspects, because I'm not a technical golf coach, but to determine all the things they do around their golf, how they practice, what are the things they do and create in their environment where they try to get better, and are those things actually designed for them to get better, or are they doing it for doing its sake? So we'd have a lot of athletes, even at the very elite level, who practice in ways that they think is very effective because maybe they've seen someone else practice that way, or they've heard about that way as a practice, but it doesn't work for them. So it's to help them challenge even themselves, but also very much challenge the environment that they practice in. Okay. What are you doing in practice that is actually going to have a meaningful transfer into that performance space? And ultimately, my job is to cut and slice things. If it's not effective, get rid of it. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it. So in that space between team and individuals, when it's specifically around the skills, that's where the main work will be. If it kind of broadens out from that, it's more then around interacting with coaches. Are they creating the right environment for everyone? Everyone to get better. Because again, there's quite a tendency for coaches to coach the way they were coached.
Right.
So you could have an athlete in 2018 being coached by someone in their 30s who's coaching the way they were coached when they were 18, 20 years earlier. And for all intents and purposes, the person who was coaching them 20 years earlier might have been coaching the way they were coached. And all of a sudden we have someone in 2018 being coached by a person who essentially is using methods from 40 and 50 years previous, you know. So it's to really refine that process in the hope that there's no junk training going on.
Okay, that's an interesting phrase. There's a couple of things I want to pick up on that you've raised there. The first, you seem to imply, and please expand on it, that there's no one-size-fits-all approach that's either been seen to work or, in your view, will work. Is that true? Did I pick that up wrong, or is it very much a customized thing? So what's the balance between the right approach for a sport or a particular thing or whatever it is versus like an individual recipe?
I think you hit the nail on the head. There is absolutely no one size fits all. I think that's probably one of the things I've learned along the way. The ideas that we're maybe told to learn, let's say, there are systems in place. So if you do these 5 things, this will happen that way. These easily packaged processes are sold to people as a mass population thing. Do this and it'll work for everyone. Yeah. And it's absolutely not the case. It is about individualization. It is about trying to connect with the person. It is about trying to find out what works with them. And the evidence to support this is there, even from something like strength and conditioning, where we say, how if we want to get strong arms, we'll do bicep curls. And yet, if we got everyone in the room here this evening to do bicep curls for 5 sets of 8 reps 4 times a week for 10 weeks, and we tested them beforehand and we tested them at the end, there isn't this
good experiment. Lucy, are we up for it?
Not a single person in this room would adapt in the same way.
Right.
Yet, even to the point that there's some evidence to show that some people would actually experience no strength gains, which is remarkable, even though they would have followed the same program, whereas someone in the room would experience huge strength gains. And yet we still peddle this idea that this mass coaching approach, we're selling systems to people, and if everyone does this, there's almost expecting this linear relationship between doing one thing and expecting this definitive outcome, and it's just not there. It's just not there, and that's why invariably talent identification programs fail and cost hundreds of millions of euros and dollars every year, and the output from them is appalling, because they're trying to squeeze people into a system where everyone's different. The best talent ID programs, if for want of a better phrase, are ones that enable people to be themselves in that space, to find out how they work best within that sport. And our very fluid systems really give people a space to be able to engage with the coach and engage with the environment, to say, actually, this works for me. The way we normally do this at this hour every day, and this, I don't work well like that. I'd like to do it at this hour. Great, well, do it at that hour, because you know what? Who's to say that that's wrong for you? Yeah. And it's not to make the role of the coach redundant, not at all. And maybe that's something we'll come up to later on, where again you try to make yourself redundant as a coach, but it's just to have the kind of coach-athlete relationship where the coach is really there for the athlete, to listen as best as you can and to engage in processes that are going to make sure the athlete absolutely reaches their potential. Not, this is the way I coach, and this has worked with this person, so why is it not working with you?
Yeah.
And that's that kind of moment, well, it's not, they're not the problem, it's you.
Yeah. I can see that. Tell me a bit more about the talent ID programs now, because that I'm listening to that. Is that like the NFL Combine kind of thing, or is that an example, or because I'm trying to think from my own.
Yeah, so
I can't think of a single time that I've. Not that it'd be anywhere near an NFL Combine, but like maybe the leaving cert is the closest thing that I got to a talent ID program, where someone said, okay, on the basis of that you can go here now, or whatever else. Yeah. But give me a sense of what the structure of those and what they are.
The NFL Combine is an absolute classic case. So for people who don't know, the NFL, the National Football League in America, is big teams like the New England Patriots and the Seattle Seahawks and so on and so forth, and it culminates in the Super Bowl that happened a few weeks ago. And every year during the summer, early summer months, they have a combine, which basically is an opportunity for athletes to go and be tested over discrete tests. How quick are you over 40 meters? How many reps of a bench press can you do in a certain period of time? How high can you jump, and so on and so forth. And so that's an opportunity for coaches and general managers of all these teams to come in and watch people and get their scores, and then make a decision based on their scores. We like that guy or we don't like that guy. And yet the results and the statistics over all the years that the combine is going, even though it's a huge event, it's on primetime TV when it's on, it's televised over 4 days.
Right.
And yet, if you were to look at it thinking, well, who does really well in the combine and who actually makes it, the relationship isn't there. It's by no means a consistent relationship or a reliable relationship. You'll get some, of course, but it's not something that would warrant the hundreds of millions of dollars that goes into it. But it's big business, it's big TV time. So there are people who aren't that interested whether it works or not, because they've got a lot of people who are going to sit down for 4 days and watch this with huge revenue coming in from advertising and the like. But you look at it, one of the most successful teams in recent decades is the New England Patriots. And yet their team is made up of people who have been dropped off teams, have been let go, who have been essentially told you're not going to play, who themselves, when it was the draft time, when teams picked their players, were nowhere near in the top, echelon in the first round of the draft, second, third, fourth. And even people who had poor combine results themselves. But the big difference in that team is a coach who genuinely coaches, who actually revels in the ability and the challenge of taking somebody and working with the individual, even within a team sport. So that everyone can buy into a singular vision, but also engage in that vision in a very personal way as well. And that's a very powerful thing to have when you have that situation where people are very much focused on the idea that I want to help this team and I'm involved in something bigger than myself, but I'm also absolutely being respected as the individual I am, and I have a voice in this team, and I'm allowed explore in this space for how I will see it and how I perceive it, let's say, so.
Well, that's very interesting, because to me anyway, what it's raising is that there is, in the case of the athletes, there's a tension between the individual story of any one athlete, their potential and what's possible, and the tension between the system. There are so many opportunities that we can only fit in. So we have to have a system, a screening system, an evaluation system. And as you were describing that, it occurred to me that there are, when we look in the world of work, the hiring systems we have, the performance management systems, and at times we're trying to refine the system, but I guess maybe we overestimate the system's power versus the any one individual's potential within that. I think that's just a healthy reminder. Am I overextending?
No, I don't think you are at all. And I think this goes right back to kids, as how we engage with kids in sport and in school and the like. I lecture out in CIT, as you know, and I see young people coming in. They're now adults. They're 18, a minimum of 18 years of age. They're in first year in college, and they're being asked by us to critically think for the first time in their lives, because the system hasn't prepared them in any way, shape or form to think for themselves. They've just come through a schooling system, and you can't blame the teachers, because they are themselves a part of being fed from something from above, to say it's not from above, but from a government perspective and a Department of Education perspective, to say, well, look, we've got metrics here that you've got to hit. And the whole thing is driven by, oh, you're doing English this year. Oh, and it's Hamlet. And Hamlet has come up on years 2000, 2004 and whatever. And on those years, these are the 3 questions that have come up each year. We're going to focus for the next 2 years on these 3 questions, so you're ready for it. They come away, do they know Hamlet? Do they care about Hamlet?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest
question. But they
question,
just learn it off by rote. You might ask them 3 months after their exams, do you know anything about it? And they'll be like, Well, there was one scene where a load of people got killed.
That was the best bit.
So they don't. So then they come into us
Yeah.
in first year, and we say, okay. We put up a slide and say, okay, here's a passage of a text from a book, or here's in front of you, here's a research paper. What do you think of that? And they're like, how do you mean? Well, what do you think? What do you think? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Is that a good study? And they look at us and they're like, and you kind of realize they've never been asked before. They've never been asked to engage in something critically before now because, well, the system doesn't allow for it. These are the questions you're going to be asked in the summer of your Leaving Cert year, and get ready for them. Outside of that, why would you worry about anything else? Because the points that you need are this and that. So we're robbing that space for them to again find themselves. So all of a sudden, and most first years in most college courses across the country, a lot of them are in there because, well, they've got to go to college straight away, don't they? Because that's what we're telling them right now, as opposed to saying, I'll only go if you're ready to go.
Yeah.
If we wouldn't have the figures we have coming out of the Department of Education that are telling us that the amount of people who do degrees and then end up going into something completely different after they finish their first degree.
Yeah.
You're kind of thinking,
I'd say a lot of people in the room would
maybe,
yeah,
but it was certainly the case for me.
Yeah.
I dropped out of college when I first went to college. I was like, wow,
You didn't like the open-ended question you got day one?
Well, to be honest, I was sitting in a room, and I actually vividly remember it. I was sitting in a room doing contract law on essentially a kind of a commerce degree.
Okay.
And I was like, what am I doing here? But I was being fed a very clear line. Go into business and sure you'll mature over the next few years. And I'm like, and all of a sudden I was in a course that did not inspire me. And there were people in the course who loved it.
Well, there you go.
But there was also a significant number of us who were like, I'm not motivated to study this because I have no interest in it. And whereas if I took a year out, let's say, it might have changed everything. I might have actually gone down a completely different route, And
so where was that line coming from now? Was that from home, from school, combination? What the lads were saying, the kind of the peer group, so what was driving you?
I think probably a peer element of, you've got to go to college when you finish school. Yeah. That's what we do,
Don't stand out, don't be weird, we're all doing
it. And guidance counsellor kind of, that almost that hurriedness to go from primary school to secondary school to degree and then get on with your life. And you're thinking, and I have 2 kids now, and I hope my wife and I will be strong enough in our convictions to be if one of our boys finishes school and is like, I don't want to go to college, I'm not ready, or there's nothing there for me, that I wouldn't say, I will do something.
Yeah.
Because it's not conducive to motivate somebody. It's not conducive to inspire anybody to jump out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd like my kids to jump out of bed in the morning the way I do. Yeah. To actually want to go into work, and then happily when work is over, want to go home. And but I don't see a lot of that around for our kids. And again, in the same space with, in the sporting space, I see a lot of athletes and teams, young and old, and I spend the vast majority of time in the elite athlete space, but fortunately with my 2 boys now, I get to, if I'm at home at the weekend, I get to hang out and do the dad coaching bit at the weekend. Okay. But even in that space, we're still fed a huge element of order, control, and structure. And I say to the other parents if I'm there on a Saturday afternoon with the under 6s, this is under stuff. 6s, these are 5-year-olds, but I would encourage any coach, no matter what level you coach at, to figure out, can you coach? Go back and coach kids. Go back and coach kids, because that'll test your mettle as a coach. That'll test your ability to keep keep their attention. It'll test your mettle on being creative, and also it'll also create a space where you'll actually have to listen to them. You can't just ignore it. If it's not working, they are going to tell you
Your
by
feedback is
starting
clear.
a lightsaber fight in the corner of the pitch.
Right, they will.
You know, and and we have to, and again, it's not the parents' fault. The other dads who are there, whose job is not coaching, they are here for 1 hour, and they're like, let me get out of here alive.
Yeah, right. It's survival.
There's 40 of them looking at me right now, and one guy looks like he's, I don't know, he thinks I'm food or something. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So we can't blame them, again, because they're being fed order. Here's what we're doing today. For the first 5 minutes, do this, and the next 6 minutes, do this. And So what I do very often when because I do quite a bit of coach consultancy, I'll go in and I'll, like a classic one that, the first time I tried it ever, years ago, I now do it all the time. I'll arrive, I'll meet the coaches, and then the coaches and the other parents will be helping out, and say, okay, I'll tell someone before, and let's make sure that the pitch has all the balls on it before we get there, and any other little paraphernalia we might need, and make sure the kids are on the pitch before we arrive out onto the pitch. And so the first time I ever tried this, the kids were all there, and they said, okay, we're ready to go. I said, no, let's just see what happens. Are the balls on the pitch? And they were behind me, and I was like, yeah, they're there. And one dad looked at me and said, if we don't get going yet, they're going to, there'll be a rebellion. And I was like, it's okay. And these were 8-year-olds, so under 9s.
Right.
And I said, let's just relax and see what happens. They had 30 kids there to be able to use, so that I could use to illustrate the kind of coaching we were going to be doing. And I was there to kind of show them that drills are not the way to go, not order, not structure, but create chaos for the kids. Let them play, the way I would have on the street. We can't play on the street anymore, but I grew up playing on the street and in the back garden and in the trees and whatever else. And that day, as I said, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. And it was like I paid the kids because it worked so well.
Right, there you go.
We were talking and chatting away, and I said, look, we're just going to talk. I said, I want to let at least 5 minutes elapse to see what happens behind us. And we didn't even get to 5 minutes, and the kids were like, let's start playing. They didn't even ask us. They took out a ball, and then all of a sudden there was a few balls out, and all of a sudden you could hear them in the background. We have a game. Yeah, okay. They sorted out a game. They even split themselves, and this was what was so remarkable. They split themselves into 4 teams. 4 teams were on the pitch behind us. Now, the actual space didn't look at all like a rectangle. They tried, but it was their rectangle.
Best effort,
And all of a sudden, at one point, a dad in front of me was like, have you seen what's happening? I said, I don't, but I can hear what it is. He said, they're actually starting 2 games behind us. And I was like, okay, well, let it go. Let's see what happens. We let them talk. We then started talking about other things, and we almost forgot that they were behind us. And about 7-8 minutes later, we were like, oh, actually, let's see what's going on behind us. And they had 2 perfectly good games of football set up behind us. The hilarious thing is they didn't even use the cones that were there that we would normally use to make goals. Right. They actually, your classic case, they threw down a bottle of water, a jersey, and whatever else. And I asked the head guy of that underage academy, the nursery they called it. I said, okay, this is incredible. I said, Noel, if you can look at that group there behind us, I said, the 4 teams, are they lopsided in any way? Is there one really strong team? And he was kind of going through, and he was like this. He said, no, they've actually self-selected 4 even teams. Why? Because it was probably 4 people said, I'll be captain, and you get 1 pick at a time. They did it all on their own. And then I turned around and said, so what do we want to do? We now want to go in there and tell them they're not playing football, that we're now going to tell them what you're doing isn't right. They were 8 years of age. What normally would happen in that situation, we'd have it all set up before they get there. We'd have all our cones out. We'd have everything. It would look like a bag of Smarties fell on the ground with all the different colour cones. And then we would tell them what to do, as if we know any better, as if we can remember what we were like at 5 and 6. And 7 and 8 and whatever. And I've done it every time since. Anytime I go into that space, if we have that opportunity, let's say, I just say, let's just see what they do. And invariably, they play. And then we get in the way.
You're building up a kind of a controversial argument here, Ed, because the line of your of your thesis is that, let's say, conventional wisdom would be, if some team is underperforming or we need to raise our level, and this applies to everything, kids, grown-ups, every aspect of human life. We need coaching. The more coaching, the better, right? There's a kind of almost a conventional thing. We're struggling, we need coaching, we need help, blah, blah, blah. So your suggestion is that coaching ain't necessarily the right intervention, or is it all about the right type of coaching?
Absolutely.
Or is it,
it's the right time.
Fill in the blanks.
It's the right time.
Okay.
Absolutely, do we need coaches? Absolutely. The bedrock of Irish sport is volunteerism, and is that space where people are interested enough to come along. And like the space I reside in is cuckoo land. It's for the tiny people, not the tiny people, the tiny percentage of people.
Right.
They're quite big, those people.
Yeah.
They're not all small. But the tiny percentage of the people. But all the rest, the mass population, is where the most important work is required, because our participation levels have gone through the floor. One in particular group of our society that is literally falling by the wayside are female adolescents. They are quite similar with their male counterparts in primary school. We hit 10, 11, 12 and it begins to shake. They go into first year in school, and by the end of first year, we have lost our female adolescents. And it's appalling. Why? Because everything around them is based around essentially more male-oriented sports, or poor PE allocated time in school, or poor creativity even in that space. Here's one ball between the 30 of you and play away, and as opposed to, well, hang on a second, maybe adolescent girls love their hurling and football and so on and so forth, but maybe they don't. Right. Maybe we should be looking at, maybe it doesn't matter what they do, so long as they're moving still, so long as they are engaged in some form of physical activity. But we don't. We're not thinking that way. So back to that question, is it about taking coaching in or out? It's about, at that age group, and taking it away from performance, let's say.
Right.
It's about keeping them involved. We are flying, and I mean flying along at breakneck speed towards an obesity problem in this country. You can hear Professor Niall Moyne up in DCU talking about how there are kids who have type 2 diabetes. A child with type 2 diabetes, this is an ailment that we should be seeing in obese men and women in their 40s and 50s, not kids. And again, it's the easy thing is to blame them directly or blame the parents. You can't. It's the structures that are behind them, and it's almost the access to the education for them. But not only just the education, it's the access to how to implement, and that's where I've some problems with books that talk to you about what it is we need to be doing, but don't help you to show you how to implement it. The how is the gold. We all know. I could ask anyone in this room what is coaching, and you'll all tell me what coaching is, and it's a mixture of being a minder and a mentor and this, that.
Yeah.
But how do you coach? The how is the essence of it, and we don't have enough spaces to enable people to engage with the how of how to do things, of actually giving them that time and space to figure it out. It's all about speed. Get there as fast as we can. So back to our 6-year-olds on a Saturday afternoon. Get them moving quickly. Okay, oh God, they're getting bored. Quickly move on to something else. Oh, geez, oh, how long? Oh my God, there's 40 minutes left. I thought we were.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, hang on, they're here to play, because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they are locked in structure. Every minute of their day is locked in. We're also now in a society where a lot of families have both parents having to work. So then they go from school and someone picks them up and takes them to somewhere else where there's structure again, order, and then so on. And then the weekends come and they're being dropped from karate to ballet to tennis to this to that and that. They're not being afforded any space to just be like, to be, what's this thing I've been asked to kick around for the last hour?
Yeah.
What other things can I do with that ball? It doesn't have to be, maybe I don't have to kick it.
I'm fascinated, from your observations about how you blend the experience that you have in a place like CIT and lecturing and developing students and so on, and working at elite level in the sporting domain. That, I was going to say, are they two different things? They obviously are two different things, but just in terms of like that feedback loop that informs both, that you realize things when you're working with one cohort and vice versa with the other. What kind of stuff comes to mind there?
I think you talk about feedback loop and going across between academia, between academia and the actual applied setting.
Yeah.
They are completely intertwined. They are absolutely, they're linked. The conversations I have with my students in first, second and third and fourth year in CIT are the same conversations I try to have with the athletes I work for the simple reason that the athletes I work for, I also want them to be critical of everything I say to them.
Okay.
I want them to be cynical. I want them to be skeptical. I want them to challenge what I do. I will throw red herrings into sessions all the time to make sure that they're actually having to think in the session, not have them become automated robots and, Ed will organize a session and this and that and that. No. More often than not, the more I engage with an athlete, the more I actually pull back. What do you think you need to do today? You know better than I do. You know how you felt this morning. You know how you're going to feel. You know how this session. Now again, we've jumped right up to that kind of elite level. But in the same way, for a first year in college, and then people feel that if you give away your control, because it is about control, if you give away your control, you're the lecturer. You have this, control over them. Right. They have to do what you say. Yeah. If you give away your control, you're losing control. And it's amazing. I've found if you actually take away that space and actually take away saying, look, I'm just Ed, okay? I'm a few years ahead of you, that's all. But you're in the same path that I was. I went back and I did a degree in sports science, and So let's not get too blurred here, thinking that everything I'm going to say is right, because it may not be. The evidence that I have at the time may have already changed since I last read up on it or whatever. And also, if I'm to look out at a class of 40 students, collectively, they would have to dwarf my knowledge in certain areas, and maybe in all areas, if they actually just pooled it together. So things like, for example, the idea of when they come out of secondary school and into college, I'll say to them, I said, I fundamentally don't care if you don't come. I'll take a register for those who are here, which will then determine whether I engage with you if you come knocking on my door. Okay. But be under no illusions. I will not be in any way, shape or form. If you don't want to come to my class, if I can't make it interesting enough, even if you're here because I couldn't get into that course, so I'm here now, this crap,
Yeah, right.
You're always going to get people like that. No matter what they're doing, there's going to be someone in your class who wanted to do something else. Yeah. Didn't get the points, and now they're doing their second choice, their third choice, whatever. Still, my job is to create a space where everyone feels, I want to go in there. I want to go in there, not because I have to, but because however way I structure the module, I want to. Okay. So I still take attendance then for the simple fact of I have rewards essentially. So I lecture as a guest lecturer in UCD and on Wednesday afternoons, and it's a similar principle. But it's amazing to see two completely different institutions with the exact same behaviors. Really? Because, they're coming out of the same education system. Okay. The exact same behaviors. And yet when I sit down at the start of a module and say, okay, I don't care if you come here, and they're all like, really? So we don't have to be here? No, you don't. You're adults now. I'll never meet your parents. And I'm now getting to the stage where I'm looking and thinking, I think I know your parents. Gorby's 1984. So that's that space where I'm saying to them, I don't want you to come unless you want to come. I'll take a register so that if you come and you have a question someday, and I look down at my register to say, Who are you? Great. I look down. Yeah, you haven't been here often enough. So you don't get my time now.
Okay.
So that then when someone does come, who has been there, you got all my time.
Right.
And that's a classic thing I've found since I moved back to Ireland a few years ago. And moved back into Ireland to move into academia as somewhat of an opportunity to grow up. Kids, and all of a sudden I was like, this elite sport thing it can be a bit shaky at times.
Right, yeah.
You're
it's the nature of it, right?
It's flying one moment and all of a sudden everyone's chucked out the next week. So I had to put some roots back down and came home to Cork. But that idea of when I came back to Ireland, I first went to UL, it was that idea of realizing I spent probably 95% of my time with 5% of the students, and they were the 5% of the troublesome students. And I was like, no way. They weren't in class, and that was a major lesson for me. If I can stay in academia, I'm going to make sure that my time, my effort, my energy, my focus and all that are for those people who bothered to turn up.
Brilliant.
So now, like today, I had it just there today at the class before I came here. As I was saying to you, might have been running a little late. There were some students, and they were, hadn't been there, and I was like, it came up to me, sorry, it's just, it was Rag Week last week, and I'm like, it was Rag Week in UCC. We're in CIT, I'm not too sure. And I'm like,
I'd like to get around.
I was like, look, you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
But just so you're aware, you missed 3 classes last week. So you've got a bit of catching up to do to be able to get into my office. And if you have a problem in week 9 or 10 and all of a sudden, there's an exam next week.
Okay. Duly noted, students. There's a few technical questions that I'd like to ask you, Ed, about coaching, but I want to come back to filling in the blanks between the man who's sitting in the chair with us now and the young fella who, did you say, definitely dropped out when you got cheesed off with the law lecture or whatever that was?
Contract law,
So
I remember it vividly.
Yeah, contract law. Jesus, that really left a mark on you.
It did.
So what path brought you to where you are today?
Probably incredibly supportive parents.
Okay.
I grew up in a house where it was all about, and if I said this to any of my 4 siblings, I'm the youngest of 5, they'd probably finish the sentence after for me. We could say anything to our parents, our 2 parents, and it would be, are you happy? That was it. Exam results. Nothing fazed them so long as we were happy. And so, for example, when I absolutely rammed my Leaving Cert first time around, I had no trepidation going in the door when I got my results, because I was in an incredibly supportive, loving home.
Okay.
Right? So then I repeated the Leaving Cert, and then all of a sudden I got into this course to do commerce and business, or business and finance, or something like this. And as I said, I was in the middle of first semester, and I went home for Christmas, and I remember going in the door down in Norway Court, and going in the door, and I'm like, I'm not going to go back in second semester. It's not for me. And it wasn't with any fear for what was going to happen. And it was like, oh really? Why is that? I don't know. It just doesn't rock my boat at all, and this and that, and like, all right, well, are you going to finish it? Not, you have to. And I said, no, I'll finish it. I'll see how the first year goes, but I'm going to go to the States. I'm going to do my J1, and I'm going to see what happens. And okay, went back up to Dublin, finished off first year, went to the States for the summer, had a blast. My mum met me, I'll never forget it, in Shannon Airport, coming back into Shannon, and she had the results from my first year college exams, and she was like, well done, you passed them all. I don't know how I passed them all, but I must have. You passed them all. And I said, I've made my decision, Mama, I'm not going to go back. And she was like, okay, I thought if I arrived with the results and
Still not.
I was never asked again. I then went And I had this incredible year back home in Cork of just trying to figure stuff out.
Okay.
What did I want to do? And
Is that a euphemism for going out? Or,
no,
all right.
actually, no, but incredibly, no, it wasn't actually. It was actually figuring stuff out.
Yeah,
I
okay.
tried. I asked a lot of people about a lot of different jobs and different spaces, and I ended up in a space that I would never have thought I would have ended up, and then came back out of that space and eventually went in as a mature student a few years later into a degree in sports science.
Yeah.
The difference is by the time I got to that degree, I had already found my passion for sport and performance and physiology and all this, and I'll never forget it, and my wife will tell you, she was my girlfriend at the time. I remember going into the apartment and being like, I'm just after I got accepted because I had to interview because I was a mature student. And I said, I got it, and they've sent me the book list. And I looked at the book list, and I'd already read all of the books on the first year book list because out of sheer interest.
You were into it. Wow.
And I'm sitting, and that's the way I feel about my two boys.
Okay, so that's interesting now, right? If you, and this is hypothetical, but I think you will have an answer, if after your leaving cert you got onto whatever that course was that you went on as a mature student, it may, whether it was there or not at the time, do you think you'd be sitting in the chair now?
No.
Okay. So.
Well, maybe, but I think
I'm not
it would have been a
so
struggle.
you would have come to the White Horse, but I'm saying, would you be doing this kind of work?
It would have been, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. Even academically, I wasn't ready. I came through school and I inherited something from my mum, which was that I wasn't good at maths.
Okay.
My mum, I'll never forget it, my mum,
this was a
maths
belief,
homework,
or
maths homework, I'm not mathsy at all.
Okay.
Oh, she's not mathsy, maybe I'm not mathsy too. And straight away I started this self-fulfilling prophecy built around me that I'm just not mathsy.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden one day I did an essay in English in second year in Rochestown College, and I got a B or something. Oh, I must be Englishy, so.
Right.
So then what happens when you think you're good at something and you like it? Well, then you do a little bit more of the thing you like, especially at a young age, and all of a sudden you get better at that. Why? Because you put more time into the thing you like, and then all of a sudden the thing you don't like, you don't put as much time into it, which further confirms, oh, you're not mathsy. Well, actually, so then my math starts getting worse and worse, my English gets better and better as a pure result of the power law of practice.
Yeah.
And I get to my leaving cert and I'm thinking, so if I went straight into that course, in that sports science course where they do, like first year sports science, you do the equivalent of honours leaving cert maths.
Okay.
No way. I just wouldn't have. You do physics. My leaving cert subjects were biology, accounting, economics, and biology, economics, accounting, and art or something. I picked up as an easy pass or something.
Yeah.
And yet, here I was, now going back when I wanted to go back, and I had never studied physics apart from the books that I had read, and they weren't even physics books, they were books on sports biomechanics, which is basic physics of the body. And it made sense because I was actually reading it with an interest. I was reading it and prepared to go back and read that page 50 times because I hadn't a clue what they were talking about, but I wanted to. I was interested enough to want to go back and read it. So it's a brilliant question because no, I don't think I would have survived. I think I would have flunked. I would have failed it because at that time in my life, I had so many different mental models of the kind of person I was. And they were based around almost inherited thoughts,
Right.
I'd say. And not just inherited from my parents, and there was no malice in that, but just inherited by just society.
Yeah.
You're either one thing or not.
Right.
And, oh, he or she's very artistic. Well, it's probably because they do a lot of art.
Yeah.
And again, so I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready
Okay.
for a challenge of being pushed out of my comfort zone. So by the time I got to it, I was game. I was game to absolutely be pushed and pulled and really, as I said, that was one of the strangest moments I could say of my life when I got a book list for first year college, and it was the list for first year sports science and DCU, and I was like, oh my God, I have that. have that. Oh, I love that one. That's a great book. And weird. Like, that's not the norm. Like,
no,
you know,
it isn't. Jesus,
and I even knew
far
that
from
myself. I was like,
Yeah.
that is weird.
Yeah.
So,
But what's fascinating about your coaching philosophy, which, by the way, I have a few questions I want to go deeper with you on, and your own story is, as we've shone light on it, is how congruent they are, you know, and how much of that you've kind of picked up from your journey has shaped how you coach.
yeah,
Really.
and again, I'd have, you know, again, like anything else, it goes back to the environment that I would have probably grown up in. Let's say, you know, 5 kids, we couldn't be more different. We're your quintessential Irish family. We're mad about each other, but too long together, and it's like, whoa, that's a bit,
Right.
you know. But you know, but in
Too
a
much of a
beautiful
good
way.
thing.
In a beautiful way,
Okay.
you know. But we are 5 completely individual people, based on the environment that we were given to just be who we wanted to be, you know.
Right.
And we've all, and I think that's something that at the time you don't appreciate at all. At
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And as my
Do
dad
you
said to
ever?
me before he passed away, and not just before, but in his time, he was like, you know, your job, if ever you become a parent, is to take on what you think is our good stuff, but make sure you leave behind the stuff that we're not so good at.
Right.
And that's tricky.
Isn't it?
That's tricky, and that's stayed with me. It stayed with me in my coaching.
Yeah.
You know, I look back in 2017, and I was very fortunate to be involved in a lot of successful spaces in 2017, but I was also involved in some spaces that did not work. Did not work.
Yeah.
And I was a part of that story, equally a part of that story. Without a shadow of a doubt, they're the stories from last year that I reflect on most.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have stayed with me. They're the ones that have taught me most lessons.
Wow, that's the upside. Yeah.
You know, they're the ones that have really, they've shaped 2018 for me, without a shadow of a doubt. Not the good stories,
Yeah.
which is amazing,
Yeah.
but it's actually the ones that failed, and that whether I like it or not, I was a part of that failure. So it's that process of just not fearing that. I know we've
Okay.
spoken about that
Yeah.
even before today, you know.
Yeah.
To not fear messing up.
Right.
Not fear messing up. And I think that's something from even a kid's point of view, even now as a dad, like there's so many things that my kids are even teaching. They're teaching me based on like just how they respond to things. That is so quickly, I catch myself thinking, what are you doing trying to control?
Yeah, isn't it?
He's 9, he's 5.
Yeah.
They're at home. Surely if you can't break things at home, where are you ever going to be allowed to break things?
That's a
you
good
know?
question. Yeah.
If you can't, you know, so we've some ground rules at home, you know, try and make sure that what you're about to throw is something that was designed to be thrown.
Okay,
basically.
that's a good rule.
But not to stop them from throwing things, you know. And if it's
Okay.
to be kicked, well, make sure it's something that should be kicked, and
Okay.
do you know that kind of way? Because
rule.
we're doing some unbelievable research out in CIT called Project Spree. Okay, some exceptional postgraduate students who've been working with primary schools in Cork to identify the fundamental movement skills of kids. Okay, there's evidence from all over the world that say by the age of 8 years of age, we have the capacity to be proficient at these fundamental movement skills. So the run, the hop, the skip, the jump, the throw, the catch, the punch, so on and so forth. There's about 12 of them. But by 8 years of age, we have the capacity to be proficient at these skills on our dominant side, let's say.
Okay.
And some say 6, more say 7, and then by 8, all the researchers across the world say, yes, we should absolutely have that down by then. And currently, in the Irish population, for 8-year-olds and older who are proficient at the execution of the 12 fundamental movement skills, we're at about 1%.
No way.
Why? Well, we're trying to figure that out.
Okay.
But you go to Eastern Europe and they have a lot higher numbers. You go down to Australia, they're higher again. We're at about 1%. We have people who can't throw proficiently, who can't catch proficiently and consistently, who can't kick proficiently and consistently. So if you can't throw, well then it's unlikely you're ever going to play a racket sport like a badminton or a tennis if you can't kick, you're not going to be able to. So if our kids don't have the opportunity to explore and learn these fundamental movement skills, we are immediately robbing them of the opportunity to engage in activity. Forget about competition and elite sport. That's an infinitesimal percentage of the world's population. It means nothing, really. But physical activity and health and well-being and moving is critical. And yet we're engineering that out of our lives all the time. And we need to be better. Things that we think are helping us by making our lives easier are actually engineering, as I said, physical activity out of our lives. And we see that in as I said, in all the spaces where the kids are. And that's the thing, you know. Like last night, I was at under 10s, my eldest, so 9 years of age, and 9 and 10-year-olds, and soccer training, and all we were trying to have them do was just figure out shapes on the pitch while still playing the game. And it's the kind of thing that if you told a mom or a dad who's just a kind of volunteer coach, they won't get it, and you're like, we need to respect them way more. They'll get it if they're given time to get it. If we want them to get it in 30 seconds, you know they won't, because you know adults don't even get it in 30 seconds.
Right.
Give them 15 minutes to figure it out, you know. And we had pods of 3 cones and 2 cones and 3 cones and 2 cones around the pitch, so enough cones for every player on the field. And they'd be playing the match, all the match going on, and at the blow of whistle they had to then run to those cones. And if there was 3 cones, 3 people had to be that cone. 2 cones, 2 people had to be that cone. And if there was, so whatever team had a bib, you know, oranges versus yellows, whichever team had a player who was the last one to get to cone, the opposition got possession. Okay? So it was straight away, they were interested because they're like, oh, we got to, and yellows were last that time. Great. Oranges now next time. We got to really work hard to get there. But all of a sudden, so we're in a game, and then they're having to figure out spatial awareness, decision making. I'm running towards the 2-cone situation, but there's a guy who's ahead of me. Don't go there now. Go and find the other one, because I'm not going to get there in time. And
is that an example of what you call constraint-based coaching, or have I
no, it is
misapplied it?
No, absolutely it is. So that game was designed because that constraint was put in that game because the previous week, or actually it was a couple of weeks because I had been away for a few weeks, the last time I saw them, they weren't very conscious at that age of running into the ball. There'd be like 9 of them around the ball, and there'd be more people getting kicked than the ball, you know? And you all you'd hear is like screams of, you know, ah! And you're like, is anyone hitting the ball? You look in, the ball is stationary, but there's boots flying everywhere. So I was thinking, so we, again, myself and one of the dads were saying, we got to try and think of something that's going to actually have them be conscious. If there's enough people there, I don't need to go in there.
Right, interesting.
So then we had this, you know, if you're running towards a 2-cone station and there's already 2 people there, well, don't go there. There's already people in there. And then we'll design, so that's a little constraint to get them better at just thinking on their feet about, if there's enough people there, I don't need to go in there. And we don't even have to tell them that. So then at the end of the session we say, okay, what do we do tonight? Played football? Yeah, yes, very good. Why did we do the cones? Well, just so that we wouldn't all be kind of running to the same place. All right. Now this is unprompted. And what else did you see about the cones? You had them around the pitch. Why? Well, to make us realise that we've got to fill the space. That's a pretty good answer from a 9-year-old. Yeah. You know what? There are adults who wouldn't even give that answer. And they've gotten to that space by being allowed to explore. And that's one of the things, that's a model that I've kind of developed, and it's not it's my model, it's just from cherry picking from other places. I try to kind of think of something that's easy for me to remember and also easy for other coaches to remember is the PEAQ model. So PEAQ is something that I'll try and use even for my own with senior athletes, but also with kids. PEAQ, P, praise. Praise them. If they don't, and it's not silly praise, it's not mindless praise, it's not well done, well done, well done, well done. No,
Right,
if they do something well, praise them. If they don't, and last night was a classic situation, a boy tried to take a shot on goal, no goalkeeper in the goal at the time, open goal, and he ballooned it 20 yards wide, okay? The first person to know that didn't work was the kid. That kid did not need to hear from me or anyone else.
Yeah, true.
In fact, that kid knew that didn't work before everyone else in the field knew.
Yeah, yeah.
So silence is enough there.
Yeah.
There's no need to further go on top of that child and be like, oh my.
Yeah.
He didn't do it intentionally.
Yeah.
If he's allowed a little bit of space to think about it, he'll probably maybe reflect, geez, maybe I should have used my other foot, or maybe I should have, and maybe not. But
Right.
But so if you're saying anything, unlucky, great effort though. You created space to be. You created an opportunity. It didn't come off, but you created an opportunity.
Yeah.
You're going to get another opportunity. Not, oh my God, what? Oh. There are professional soccer players who miss from 4 yards out.
Right.
You know, and they're paid €50,000 a week, and they miss from 6 yards out with no goalkeeper in. So that'd be the first thing, to praise.
Yeah.
Absolutely praise. And the E is for explore. Let them explore. Let them take as long as they need to figure out a rule.
Okay.
So if I put in a rule saying, okay guys, you have to, let's say if they're not passing, I'll put in a constraint saying, okay, before you can take a shot on goal, you have to have 4 passes between your teammates. Now if the opposition intervene and you've only had 3, well then they have to get 4 passes before they can take a shot on goal. If they don't get it and they keep shooting, and after 2 passes taking a shot, and they score and say, okay, great, no goal though, you know the rule. We'll keep at it.
Okay.
And we'll keep, now, there comes a point in time, that's where the coaching comes in. If they are 20 minutes and they still don't get it, well then maybe 4 passes is too much for the team at that age.
Okay.
You may take it to 2 passes. Like if they're not passing at all, 2 passes is huge.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
And that's where you then adjust the thing. But I give them time to figure it out. So with that, I'll kind of jump to the cue.
Okay.
If they're exploring, they can't figure out, or if they're exploring, they do figure out, I'll come in and I will not tell them what I'm observing. I'll ask them a question. So cue is for question. The first thing out of my mouth will be a question. How did that work there? Why? How is it not working? Can we make it better? How could we make it better? And again, we've done this with the under 6s, and 5-year-olds get it. Why? Because they love being asked questions. It makes them feel like they're a part of it.
True?
And in the middle of it, now don't get me wrong, in the middle of asking with the 5-year-olds, you're going to have some guy who's going to be
he's just going to break.
And he's going to try to look around and he's wandering off, and you're like, I think we need to.
Yeah.
But they're 5. So one of the things I'll try and do, so let's say, and they used that earlier on, the lightsaber moment, and then all of a sudden there's lightsaber fights going on the pitch. Join in.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that either.
There's nothing. They're 5-year-olds having a lightsaber moment.
Don't become between them.
Can you imagine going in there as Darth Vader and all of a sudden they're like,
I've seen a few of them playing for Nemo over the years.
You know,
Darth Vader.
and you have but you know what you've done? You've bought time with them. They're like, I don't see him as the dad, as the coach, as the person I have to, and all of a sudden you're just removing that thing of, I'm in control. And we're like, we're all in here together. You're down your knees, you're like, whoa, nice one. Okay, 2 more hits and then we'll go back into the game.
Yeah.
So you don't stop it straight away. 2 more hits and we're back in the game. 1, good. Well done, we're back in. Now, 7 times out of 10, you might have to go for maybe 2 more hits. But you're back, and then you're back in, and they want to be back in. And like I spoke to a coach not so long ago, and he was like, just ignore the kids. They're just looking for attention. I was like,
that's it. You could nearly.
They're looking for your attention, man. So give them your attention.
Yeah.
It's likely that they're lacking that attention in their lives. If they're at soccer or basketball, and they're looking for attention, it might be the only opportunity they get this week.
Wow, that's true.
And so it is. So praise, explore. The A is for affirmation.
Oh, okay.
And affirmation is to link the praise with something they've done. It's not just empty praise, because empty praise it's empty, it's false, it's, it becomes white noise.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's,
in the end.
well done, you tried with your left foot, I saw you, that's great. So now you're praising them and you're linking that praise to something that they've actually done, that they can realize, he's noticed that I'm using my other foot. So you try to remove things like the self-fulfilling prophecy about I'm not mathsy.
Right.
And you change it into, oh, that's my bad leg. We don't know of any, so we have fun with that with the kids. Your bad leg, show me, what happened to it? And they're like, well, no, it's just my bad leg. I know, what? So how many toes are on that leg? And they're like, no, it's my bad leg. What are you on? I have the same toes. And I'm like, so is there any difference between that leg? No, you weirdo. Right, so stop calling it your bad leg, because it's not a bad leg. It's just a leg you haven't used. It's just you haven't used it often enough. And you know what? We're going to create a thing. So like last night, we had a game, 2 big goals, and we had 2 guys who wanted to go in goal. Great, brilliant. If they want to go in there, let them go in there, Two bigger goals, but appropriate for their size, and then 2 little mini goals on the sides. Okay, so 4 goals, basically, north, south, east, and west. The match was going on, but anyone could score into the 2 mini goals if they scored with their left leg. At any time, no goalkeepers in there. Still counted. And the guys were like, but I'm left-footed. Brilliant, that should be really easy for you. Why do we do that? So then we actually have their own peers seeing how someone with their left leg uses their left leg. No point in a 44-year-old old fart like me showing them how to use my left leg. I'm 6 foot and they're 4 foot, and they're like, hey, that makes no, I don't look like you and I can't relate to you. Yeah. But I get the left-footed kids, play with your left foot. You should be the superstar for this game. Great, and they are, because all of a sudden everyone else is the, and they're having to figure it out, and they're exploring, and we let them fail, and we just let them enjoy the idea of fall. And that's the other thing, to have that space where we enable them to laugh at themselves, so that it's not serious. Right. Especially going back to that talent ID programs. Yeah. Their rate of success is nothing. They're infinitesimal, in fact, for what you actually get out of it. I actually remember back in probably 2010 or so, I did some work, and this is a big name drop. I did some work with Chelsea. Okay. Not much, a little bit of work. The place I was up in Liverpool, in John Moores University, we had been contacted to go down and look at some of the stuff they were doing. They had bought this new facility, a fully interactive pitch with sensors on the ground and cameras, and absolutely state-of-the-art thing. And I went down to ask to go now. So I was sent down to do some work with them for a few days. And I remember meeting the head of the academy down there, and I said, what's your job? And he was like, well, he said, you came in the Cobham Road there in our security, and you go down, when you're going into the Chelsea training paddock, you drive down the middle, and on the right is all of the first team pitches and the first team building and the first team car park. And at the back then is their final training facility on kind of match day. And on the left is all the academy. And they never meet, only if they graduate across the car park. And he said, my job, now this is going back a while, so it may have changed. Okay. He said, my job is to get 1 player every 3 to 5 years to cross the car park. Wow. And you're like, I'd like that job. Yeah, he should be able to get that. 1 player every 3 to 5, how loose is that? 1 player every 3 to 5 years to cross the car park. Because so the vast majority of the players who are in the Chelsea system are probably playing for other clubs. Well, yeah, that's true. And lower league clubs. Imbalance, yeah. And, yeah, weird. And not playing at all, in fact, because it's just not sustainable. And that's in a club that money is no object. Yeah, they just buy in players all the time, and but they have this kind of, we're linked with the community and we provide all these facilities and so on. Great, but you're also linking it to success. So what happens when the kid doesn't get picked up at 14 and all they've ever done is this, and all their eggs are in this basket? Yep. Where do they go? And that's what needs to be better. Fascinating. There are so many questions that I want to ask you, but taking away PEAQ, PEAQ.
which we won't forget and
Yeah.
we'll apply from this moment forward. We're going to bring this to a pleasant end and invite some questions from our audience. Ladies and gents, Ed Coughlan.
Thank you.